We forgot makeup. All right. Basics of Biblical Hebrew, page 40, chapter 5. The definite article and the conjunction vav. All right. Middle of page 40, you can see the definite article. Hebrew is like Greek in the sense that there is no word for an indefinite article like we have in English. The definite article in English is what? The, or the, right? The indefinite article in English is a, or an, right? Well, there is no indefinite article in Hebrew per se. If you don't have an article, then the word can either be translated prophet or a prophet, for example. The definite article obviously makes something definite. We'll go through some of the uses of it. But the form of the definite article is seen in that box. There's a definite article attached to the word melech, king, and ha with a hey, and a patak, and a dogish forte in the next letter is the form of the definite article. Now, some things can happen in various circumstances, which we'll talk about, but basically that hey on the beginning of a word is the part that's not going to change, is the part that is, you get it? Right on. Is the part that is recognizable for the definite article. So you see it down on the bottom of page 40, some examples. Navi for prophet, Hanavi for the prophet.
So the dogish forte doesn't really change the pronunciation.
Well, not very noticeably.
I mean, it would be so...
For Melech, it would be Ham Melech.
You just kind of speak fast.
Yeah.
Kind of run the words together.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a double letter in English, you know.
It's split syllable. Yeah, it's split the pronunciation now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna split the syllable, you'd have hey and main and then main and so on. But it's really not noticeable.
What would you have a pause there? If you were reading, you would say Melech, or would you say Hamelech?
Well, Ham Melech. Ham Melech. It may change the pronunciation of a Begad Kafat letter, in that, being the first letter, it would already have the Dagish Lene in it. Now it's not the first letter, but it still has a Dagish in it, so it maintains its hard pronunciation for a Beit and a Pei, particularly. All right, so Zachain, elder, Ha-Zachain, the elder. Sus, Hasus. Shofet, Ha-Shofet. You see? Now, the article in the initial Begad Kafat letters, it simply changes the Dagish Lene, the weak Dagish, in the initial Begad Kafat letter, into a Dagish Forte. So it means it doubles the letter. A Dagish Lene doesn't double the letter, it just has to do with the way the letter is pronounced. A Dagish Forte doubles the letter. So if you were going to transliterate it, it would change the spelling in transliteration. All right, so that's not such a big deal with the Begad Kafat letters. Now, the article and initial guttural consonants and resh. Why is that an issue? Because gutturals and resh cannot take a Dagish. And how you spell the article, hey with a patak and a Dagish forte in the next letter. Right? So, what happens with the Dagish? For example, the word ish. If you want to say the man, see how it's there written on the bottom of page 41? Take a guess at what has happened. Well, the Dagish can't go into the guttural, right? Can't put a Dagish in an aleph.
How would you say?
Yeah, you can't. It's really hard to double a guttural sound, right? People think you're choking. Maybe that's right.
That's what it would be, right? You would actually go,
I suppose so, yeah. But you don't do that in Hebrew. So what happens is the patak lengthens. So you have a compensatory lengthening. When one thing changes, a lot of times something else changes to compensate for it. It's like that in language, because if you're going to add one thing, then it kind of changes how you want to pronounce it. So, but the sound of it is really the same. Ha-ish. That kametz and the patak virtually sound the same, don't they? In the way I say it, they do sound the same. Or isha goes to ha-isha. Head, rosh, ha-rosh. Ear, ha-ear, etc. When hey or hey is the first consonant, you get a virtual doubling. So, in other words, the dagesh just drops out with no other changes apparent. Right? And then in the segol vowel, the irregular segol vowel number 3, when you have an ayin or a hey or a hate, unaccented, and hate also may be accented to follow this rule, the definite article appears with the segol, the short e vowel, without the dagesh forte. So, like if you had chacham, a wise man becomes he-chacham. So you're just not wanting to, have so many gutturals with the same vowel sound in a row. Maybe it's just hard to distinguish. The main thing, though, is when you see a hey added to the beginning of a noun, you're probably looking at the article. The vowel points do various things, so don't be too worried about that. The basic spelling of the article is hey with a patak and a dagesh forte in the next letter. Right? And sometimes when the dagesh forte can't go in the next letter, things happen in terms of changes with the vowel point under the hey. Sometimes it goes to a kametz, sometimes it does nothing, sometimes it goes to a segol, an e sound. He, in other words. Okay? That's gutturals. The article with initial yod and mem, with few exceptions, words that begin with yod with a shavah and mem with a shavah, give up the dagesh forte that is associated with a definite article. Well, how are you going to double a letter with a shavah under it? That's not going to work very well, is it? Right? Now, even though it's a vocal shavah. Right? And so, for example, ya-ladim, boys, becomes pai-ladim, boys. Or ma-ragalim becomes ham-ragalim, spies. In both instances, the dagesh forte is given up, but the patak vowel is not lengthened. This is similar to the issue of virtual doubling with gutturals. And notice that the loss of the dagesh forte in each word causes it to lose a syllable. So instead of being ya-ladim, it becomes hai-ladim. In other words, the article and the yod, or the article and the mem, form one syllable.
I'm missing when you're giving up the dagesh forte. I don't see it in there.
That's the whole point. You don't get it. The dagesh forte is not there. And then the shavah goes from a vocal shavah to a silent shavah. So how are you going to double a letter that has a shavah under it?
So it wouldn't even be there to start with. It's not even there to start with.
What?
Dagesh forte.
No. You can't, because you're talking about a letter with a shavah under it. You can't double it. So really, what it does is just this is not there. Don't worry about it.
I think it's the wording of the book that to me. Oh, this is just the 14 to give it up. It's not given up.
Right.
That's all. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's given up if you're starting with how you normally spell the article. Right? So you spell the article differently.
Out of the patak, the dagesh forte.
Yeah, normally it's patak, dagesh forte. Here it's just patak, no dagesh forte. So it depends on what you view the starting point as being. If you're viewing the word itself as the starting point, it was never there. But if you're viewing the proper spelling of the article as the starting point, that's where it's given out. Yeah, I can see where you're going. That's why it's hard to learn a language without, a face-to-face, or at least tape or some sort of somebody to walk you through it and be able to ask questions or something. In other words, you could just take this book and learn Hebrew, right? What do you need me for?
So what does daughters become? Banon from Banim? It's boys is Paladim. Daughters would be. What would daughter become? Banim?
Well, you're adding the plural of, you're talking about adding the article.
Yeah, the daughter. Habanon? Habanon, I guess it would be. Habanon. For daughters?
Because it was just dealing with the good and the men.
Yeah, because you have, all it does is make the dogish lene in the bait, the dogish forte. So it's habanot. So there really isn't much significant change at that point. Okay, and then vowel changes. You know that a Hebrew noun is rendered definite by the prefix of the definite article, he, patak, plus the dogish forte in the first consonant of the noun. You also know there are some minor variations to the standard construction, especially with initial guttural consonant. There are a few nouns that deviate from these rules. But none of these changes should concern you too much. It is good to be aware of exceptions and variations to the standard pattern, but it is more important for you to concentrate on what does not change. The presence of the prefix he never changes. That is, no matter what the vowel of the dogish forte do or do not do, the he is unaltered. So that's what you're looking for, the he at the beginning of the word. Secondly, the stem of the noun will rarely change with the addition of the definite article. Therefore, if you know your vocabulary, see here you go, and understand that a prefix he indicates the definite article, you will rarely have any trouble identifying nouns with the definite article in Hebrew. So, stuff's going to happen with the vowel points. You don't need to lose sleep over that. The great thing is, now if you were learning Hebrew to be able to write it or to speak it, then you got to be concerned about those things, right? But we're learning Hebrew to recognize it. Now, sometimes we want to overlearn it, right? But it's much easier to be able to learn to recognize it than it is to try to learn it to speak it or learn it to write it. Because we just have to go, that he, whatever the vowel point is, that's the definite article. That's all I need to know. I don't need to be able to predict what the vowel point will be for a word. Now, you're taking modern Hebrew and you're trying to speak it, so it's a whole different thing. You need to be able to know it well enough to predict and be able to say it. And, so it's just a whole different level of learning, right? All right, so in a small group of words, the prefixing of the definite article occasions slight changes in the vocalization of the noun. So, eretz becomes haaretz, and that's the form we saw in Genesis 1, remember? Am becomes ha'am, but that's a difference in the pasuk and the comments. Gan becomes hagan, har becomes hahar, aron becomes ha'aron. All right, so that's the definite article, and that's not that difficult to deal with. The conjunction, vav, means basically, it can mean a lot of different things, but the most basic meaning is and, but also even, and maybe some more you could probably tack on there. So before consonants, the spelling of vav appears as a vav with a vocalized shavah. So for eved, if you want to say and a servant, you would say va'eved. Instead of isha for woman, you would say va'isha. Instead of ha'isha for the woman, you would say va'isha for and a woman. And a man is va'ish, and the man is vaha'ish. So you see how we're stringing stuff onto it? Get used to that, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be stringing stuff onto the stem. For our nouns, we can have the conjunction here. We can have a definite article. We can have pronominal endings. Now, if I wanted to say, and my man, I could say va'ishi, because E is a first person singular possessive ending. You can stick on the end of the word. Right? You could stick prepositions onto the beginning of a word, all sorts of things like that. Right? When we come to verbs, we're going to be sticking prefixes or preformatives and subformatives or endings onto verb stems to get different person and number and tense and those sorts of things. Right? Even stuff in the middle of verbs, which is fun. So we're starting essentially with the three characters, the three consonants of a Hebrew stem, typically, right? You can look at the word for Pharaoh and see that has four. Why? That's a loan word, isn't it? That word obviously didn't originate in Hebrew. So they're using Hebrew letters to pronounce an Egyptian word. Right? So that's one way you can kind of tell loan words. Pharaoh and words like that. But typically, a Hebrew word will have three consonants, and then we're going to just add stuff to it. All right. So typically, the base spelling of the conjunction is vav with a shavav. There are two circumstances, bottom of page 43, in which the conjunction will appear next page as a shurit. They spell with a shurit before the consonants bait, mem, or pay. The labial consonants. See what does labial mean? Your lips. You say those consonants with your lips, and you don't want to get lip tied by trying to say baba, or bama, or baba, right? So it becomes ooh. In other words, you just take that vav and turn it into a vowel sound, so you get ooh ba, or ooh, or or ooh, oof. And that's much easier to say. So Bain becomes uvain. Now try saying vavain. That sounds really silly, doesn't it? Bayit becomes uvayit. Melech becomes umelech. And Paro becomes ufaro. The conjunction vav is also spelled with a shurik before most consonants having a vocal shavav. So note the following examples. If you have na'arim, so a lot of times when you pluralize these words, the beginning consonant ends up with a vocal shavav, right? So na'arim becomes na'arim. Za'arot becomes za'arot. Safarim becomes safarim. And Shamuel becomes Shamuel. But again, that vav, easy to recognize, there it is. Yehuda becomes Vihuda. It's a little bit of an irregular, right? Before a reduced or katef vowel, that's the vowel with the shavah looking thing, the conjunction is spelled with a corresponding short vowel of the katef vowel. So you can look at chalom, a dream, well you get vachalom at that point. But the bottom line on the middle of page 45 is kind of a sweet thing to hear. He says, let us end our discussion of the conjunction vav with a final point of encouragement. In addition to this conjunction, there are only 6 other words in the Hebrew Bible that begin with the consonant vav. 3 proper nouns, 2 common nouns, and 1 adjective. These 6 words only occur 18 total times in the Hebrew Bible. So you're not going to run into very many words, that in their vocabulary form start with vav. In the whole Hebrew Bible, 18 times. All right? So, if you see vav at the beginning of a word, over 99% of the time, it's going to be the conjunction vav. So, if that's all if every time you see vav, you look at it as a conjunction, and you read your whole Hebrew Bible, you're going to make 18 mistakes. That's a pretty good percentage, isn't it? And I bet you when you ran across it, you probably would recognize it most of those 18 times just automatically. Yeah, that's right. So, if you say a hey at the beginning of a noun, not a verb, but a noun. If you see a hey at the beginning of a noun, you're looking at an article. You know, whatever's going on with the vowel points and the dagashim and all this sort of stuff, don't worry about it. If you see a vav at the beginning of a word, it's going to be the conjunction, right? Most of the time. Okay, there's the reversing vav on verbs, but that's a whole other thing. We'll get to that. You should have mentioned the reversing vav on verbs here, shouldn't you? Now remember, you can have a vav on the front of a word and other stuff on the front of the word. You could have a vav, conjunction on the front of a word, and after the vav's going to come first, right? But after the vav, you could have an article stuck on there. After the vav, you could have a conjunction. Not a conjunction, I mean a preposition. After the vav, you could have a preposition and an article. We'll talk about that. If you have that, the hey doesn't show up. All right? So these summaries in these chapters are remarkably useful. This is a great way for you and for me, frankly, to test ourselves, to make sure that we have all of this stuff down in these chapters. If you can look at these summaries and understand what they're talking about, first of all. If you don't understand it, just flip back to the section till you understand it, right? But if you can understand what they're talking about, this is a great study tool right here, these summaries. It's fantastic. And you can even circle the numbers that you think, I need to memorize this, so let me circle this number, right? Or this is something that's important, needs to be committed to memory. And you can use those, I think, to your benefit in a huge kind of way. Vocabulary, page 46. Before we do vocabulary, let me ask you 30 questions. We've just covered the definite article and the conjunction. How do you know whether to translate the conjunction and, or even, or also, or but? Even, how do you know? Well, there are 2 or 3 main words in seminary that are the right answer to most things. So if you're ever taking a test and you don't know the answer to the question, you could pick from 2 or 3 things and you have a high likelihood of that answer being right. One answer is Jesus. Another answer is love. And the third answer is context. Right? So how do you know how to translate the vav? Context.
Jesus loves context.
Jesus loves context. Well, that's true. That's a great interpretive principle. Jesus loves context. So if you're taking things out of context, Jesus doesn't like it. I like that. Very good. So if you're in a language class, context is probably an answer you want to use on a question you don't know. If you're in a theology class and you don't know the answer to the question, put down Jesus, because you could get some points, right? And if you're in a pastoral class, put down love, because that could get you some. So if you just know what class and what answer to use, you could be okay.
My next vocabulary: Jesus, love.
Yeah, no, this is language class. Context. All right. Any questions over that chapter? Okay, vocabulary. Let's go around the room. Sean, right? Okay, let's go around the room and let you pronounce the vocabulary, so we can work on that a little bit. And this will be our first moment for learning this vocabulary. Because what we want to do, we always want to engage our notice button in our brain, right? Our consciousness of things. Because you can go through this and pronounce this vocabulary and look at it and not know it any better when we finish the list than if you've never looked at it at all, right? That's possible. But if you're noticing, then this is your beginning of actually remembering the vocabulary, right? If it's not, it's just you spent your time in class. Okay, so pronounce the first one for us. Excellent. All right, that means fire. All right.
The word is woman.
No, woman is isha. It's almost the same word as man. Yeah, That may not be accidental. That may not be accidental. I don't know. Sorry. Well, I'm married to a redhead, so what can I say? All right. Dan, next. Yes. In fact, that's good. Hekal. Now, why is that not Hekol? If I were pronouncing it Hekol, what would that last vowel be? No. Well, I'm not saying change the vowel. I'm saying it appears like this, but it's a different vowel.
This is a commas top, commas.
Okay, yeah. If I pronounce it Hekol, I'd be pronouncing it as a comet skatooth. But it's not. Why? This is just a regular comet. Why? And remember, comets, along with sere, right, and holum, are long changeable vowels, right? Why is this not a comet skatooth? It's in a closed syllable.
But it's in the accent.
The accented syllable, right? Comet skatooth occurs in a closed, unaccented syllable. This syllable is accented. Why? Because the last syllable is always accented, unless I'm told otherwise in the text. Right? So you pronounce it just right. Hekal, which means palace or temple. I'll do the next one. Va, right? And, but, also, even. All right. Tin. Pardon? All right, now there's no dogish in the bait, so it gets pronounced va. Okay, so you have a zayin, hey, bait. So say it again. Close. You remember those two a vowels you have. So zayin, and then an a vowel, hey, and an a vowel, and then the bait sounds like a v. Not yet.
Too long.
Yeah.
Short A.
Well, you put an extra syllable at the end of it. They're both ah vowels, right? Zahav. Zahav.
They actually separate, so I'm trying to say it together.
Yeah. Zahav. Zahav. That's gold. All right. Les? Okay, that's very good. And you can see the accent over the first syllable there, right? That's one of those Segol words, Segolic nouns, where the accent occurs on the first syllable, right? So this is, and the chet is pronounced a little bit gutturally, cherev. Cherev. So that's sword, and it's a feminine word. All right, now here's a little bit of a challenge, but tell me your name again.
I'm Jerry.
Jerry, okay, I should know that. I have a hard time concentrating on real life and Hebrew at the same time. But, okay, so we have two Jerrys, don't we? But they're spelled differently, aren't they?
Yes.
G-E-R-I, right? And yours is?
J-E-R-I.
J-E-R-I, right, okay. So see, there's diversity. All right, try this one. No, now this is a short one with two letters, right? What's the first letter?
It's a H.
Chet. Okay, and then you have the patak yod. So take another stab at it.
I would say hi.
Yes, that's right. Say it again.
Hi.
Right, but you got to do that part.
Hi.
Now, wait a minute. Now, don't give me that hi separate. Give it to me together.
Hi.
There you go. Chai. Right? Chai. There's a temple in Phoenix, not a temple, a synagogue in Phoenix that has that in its name. You see that from time to time. The word for life in Hebrew, life, lifetime, chai. In fact, I've seen necklaces written out that way, Hebrew. Chai. You have one? And now you know how to say it. Now, see, tell me this isn't worth the price of the class right there for that by itself. So it's almost high, but not quite. Chai. All right, good. Carl. Yeled. Very good. Male child or a boy. All right, Jerry? Yom. As opposed to yom. All right, so don't confuse that. Yom is day. Yom is sea or west. Why would the same word be used for sea and west?
Big sea, little sea.
Hmm?
Dead Sea.
Well, all right.
Well, the Big Sea is west, and the Dead Sea is east.
Yeah, so the very big sea, the major sea, is to the west of Israel. That's right.
Now, just a question. Yom and Yom.
Right?
If you don't put the vowel points in there, they're both in Yod.
No, because the yom is going to have a vav as the vowel. Cholam vav, which undoubtedly would have occurred in the original text. At least I think it did. So you would be able to distinguish between the two in that way. Now you could have a defective spelling so that you have a yod just with a cholam and a mem. But yeah, the yom is going to have a vav in the middle of it. Those are great questions, by the way. That's how you have to think. And those kind of questions are great questions. Just trying to process all of the stuff. And believe me, if you will spend the time with the whole thing, you will get used to the whole oddness of it. You're not over it yet. I can see that. But you'll get over it. And pretty soon, it just will become second nature to you. When I look at a page of Hebrew now, I don't even realize I'm reading from right to left. It's just that natural. It doesn't even cross your mind that you're doing it. In fact, sometimes I get confused in the book when we're going English and then he's doing Hebrew, and I'm thinking, okay, because sometimes he doesn't do it right to left because he's doing it because it's in an English order, and I'm automatically trying to do it right to left, but that's not the way you need to do it. So it just, I'm having trouble sometimes seeing things now, but apart from that. It just becomes as natural as can be. And if you spend the time, very quickly it will become natural. In less than 6 years, I'm teasing. If you, in just a few weeks, if you spend the time, it really will become a natural thing. Okay, let's start over on this side.
Silver?
Yeah.
Kesef.
Very good. And notice that's another one of those Sogolit nouns with the accent on the first syllable, and you did that just right. Means silver, kesef. Now, you're going to have to start thinking of ways to remember these words. I mean, these words are coming fast and furious, aren't they? Right? So you're going to have to start thinking of ways of remembering these words. Tricks, if you will. However it clicks in your mind, what can you associate with the word or the sound kesef to get you to silver? Okay, Dan.
Coal.
That's right, ko. Thus or so. All right, next.
Makom.
Very good. Makom. Exactly. Place. Next.
Meshech.
Close. You got the first syllable you got right. Now that sheen, it is a sheen. It's got a silent shiva, right? So that mem and hirik and sheen all form a syllable, and so you got that first part right. Mish. Okay. Now let's look, and you got another closed syllable. What's the next letter? Okay, pay, and then a comet. And now, where's the accent going to be? There isn't one marked, so the accent's going to be on the last syllable. So that's not going to be a comet's ketuf, right? Because it's on an accent. Huh? Very close, but it's an ah. That comet is an ah sound. Perfect. Okay, mishpat. Mishpat. All right. Judgment. Custom or justice. Yeah. All right. Mishpat. All right. Next. Oh no, this is a challenging one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, what letters do we have? The first letter is what? Mem. All right. Next letter is Zion. Zion. Okay. Next letter? Okay. Next letter? Very good. Now, this is odd because we have a furtive patak. Remember the furtive patak? That's a great word, by the way. Furtive, right? Secretive. You know, you can use that outside of Hebrew stuff, right? You're being furtive, aren't you? But the furtive patak gets pronounced between the tsere of the bait, and the chet. So the tsere is going to sound like what?
Say that again. Ask that question.
Tsere. The tsere under the bait. What's that vowel sound like? A. And so you got to pronounce the patak next. So that's going to be ayach. That sounds kind of Hebrew anyway, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Right? So that's how it's not pronounced echa, because that's a furtive patak under that. Okay, it's ayach. Okay, so try the whole word. Perfect, right. Mizbeach. All right, that means altar. All right, next. All right, now the Shava on the beginning of a word is always vocalized. So that's just like a quick kind of a sound. So now let's look. What letters do we have? First letter is then Mem, final Mem. Okay, good. So now the Shava, beginning of a word, is always vocalized. It's just a half a vowel kind of a thing, right? And then you have a kibbutz. What does a kibbutz sound like? Yeah, ooh. Pardon? Well, with a noon. Na'um. Yeah. Na'um, utterance, declaration. You see this all the time in kind of an odd kind of way. Na'um Adonai, the word Yahweh. A declaration of Yahweh. Meaning, this is some serious stuff, pay attention to it. Okay. So na'um, utterance or declaration. All right, Jared. Olam, yeah, very good. Forever, eternity. All right, starting back over with Sean.
Anan.
Okay, Anan, clouds, very good. Him? Dana, sorry. Not quite.
I have real trouble with the guttural.
Yeah, well, don't worry. I mean, the chet, I don't even pronounce the other gutturals, but the chet is just, that's like you're out, on the baseball field. And may not be able to do that one just fine.
Shot?
Okay, where are you getting a sh sound, didn't it?
I'm trying to do
We got the furtive patak, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah, but just take the sh sound out of there.
Ruach.
That's it, exactly. Ruach. All right. Yeah, furtive patak's a little bit, it's furtive, isn't it? But that's good. That sound, do that. So that means wind or spirit, and we saw that in Genesis 1 too, right? The spirit, ruach. All right, Tim.
Shar.
Pardon?
Shar.
Well, it's 2 syllables. I'm not going to actually pronounce the I in guttural. I mean, you could try to pronounce it, but I'm not going to worry about pronouncing it. But I will pronounce both the vowel points separately.
Sha'ar.
That's it, sha'ar. Now you can say sha'ar if you want to try to do the guttural. But sha'ar is how I would say that. Well, actually, I'm doing it wrong because the accent's on the first syllable. Sha'ar, which means gate. Okay, Les.
Shemen.
Close, but you have that patak ayin, and then the hirik under the. Right, I said ayin, I meant yod. You have the patak yod and the hirik under the yod. So that's a little bit. That's kind of a hard one actually. But we do want to be able to say this word, because when we get to the pearly gates and they say, "Where do you want to go?" we want to tell them in Hebrew, right? Just to make sure there's no doubt. Yeah.
Uh-oh. So you saved yourself.
Take one more stab at it. Say it. Okay, very close. Now, notice the accent has to go over the main and the patak. So, Shemayim. And this was from Genesis 1 too, right? The heavens and the earth. So this means Shemayim. This is heaven or heavens or sky even. Shemayim.
Yeah, but this is affirmative in water, so Shemayim and Mayim. Shows that. So
that's different. Mayim is water. Shemayim is heaven. So
right. But isn't that the beginning? And he's separated the.
No, we're going to look at that tonight. At least I plan to if we have time to do it. And I hope it looks like we're going to. All right. So finally, one more, Jerry.
Sir?
Close. Patak. What's that sound like? There you go. Sar. That's right. Now this is a scene, and you picked that up very well. It's not a sheen, it's a scene. Sar, official leader prince. Yes.
Could you just go through all those and pronounce them once, please?
All right. Here we go. Aish, fire. Heikal, palace, temple. Va, and but also even. Zahav, gold. Cherev, sword. Hai, light. Yeled, male child boy. Yam, sea, west. Kesef, silver. Ko, thus, so. Makom, place. Mishpat, or better, mishpat, judgment. Mizbeach, altar. Naum, utterance, declaration. Olam, forever, eternity. Anan, cloud. Ruach, wind, spirit. Sha'ar, gate. Shemayim, heaven. Sar, official leader prince. All right. I hope you're reading these devotional things. They're good, aren't they? That's good stuff. Yes?
I think that last word is carried into some other languages, so it's Caesar and Tsar in Russian and Kaiser.
Possible. It's quite possible. Yeah.
It goes both Indo-European and Semitic. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I don't know that to be the case, but it's quite possible. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know.
Interesting to know where it came from.
You wonder if we even get our word "sir" from it. I wonder if we get our word "sir" from it, but yeah, I wouldn't want to make a statement on that without looking it up. But those kind of things are interesting. It'd be fun to look at that. Now let's look at some advanced uses of the definite article on page 48. The demonstrative adjective. So sometimes it can be translated "this." I'm commanding you this day. The vocative use, which is direct address. O king, O man. The superlative use. The best and the most upright. The possessive pronoun also. David took the harp. Well, just as we saw in Greek, sometimes that article can be used in a possessive sense. David took. Huh?
No Greek. What are you talking about?
Well, the article can be used as a possessive sometimes. So it's not really David took the heart. David took his heart. So sometimes the article can be used to show possession. Context.
So
That's
is
right.
that like somebody's interpretation of that then, or do you just
Context.
assume that it becomes a possessive rather than
Just assumed in Hebrew.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are contexts where the possessive pronoun is attached, and later the article is used to show the possessive, so that you could probably find a context like that, so you can be certain that that's how the article is used sometimes. But that is that way in Greek as well.
In Arthur's article and in Arthur's article, whether it was agad rather than egad.
Well, anarthrous means without the article.
Trying to figure out the context.
But theos in John 1:1 you're talking about
Right.
is anarthrous. In other words, it doesn't have an article, which stretches the quality of it. So that translation, you could say, the word was divine. The quality of godness. Let's see. But that's without the article. All right, very good. Let's look at some Hebrew prepositions. How are we doing on the tape?
46 minutes.
We have how long?
About 40 minutes.
Oh, 40 minutes? Okay, good. All right. Preposition. What's a preposition? One definition of a preposition is anywhere a squirrel can go. Well, that works in English at least. Above, under, over, around, through, between. Yeah. So all those are prepositions, and so generally that's a pretty good way of looking at Hebrew prepositions. Before, after, time-wise prepositions as well. So you have three kinds of prepositions in Hebrew: independent prepositions, makaf prepositions, and inseparable prepositions. And this is entirely entirely categories based on spelling. It doesn't have anything to do with meaning at that point, right? Some prepositions are independent. In other words, they're their own word by themselves. And some examples of this are on this page. Lifnei hamelech, before the king. Tachat ha'etz, under the tree. Achar hamabuol, after the flood. Bain hamayim, between the waters. So you see how those prepositions are words all on their own. All right. Then there are makaf prepositions, which means they're words kind of on their own, except they're connected to the next word, or it's the object of the preposition by the makaf, that horizontal line that's up high on the space, right? You see it there.
By the llama.
Huh?
By the llama.
By the what?
By the llama.
Yeah. Right.
So is the McCabe symbol the original text?
Right, yeah. I would say it is, yeah. So the preposition all, upon, is a makaf preposition because it occurs, have the makaf after connecting it to its object. So all ha-aven is upon the stone. El ha-hekal is to the temple. And you're picking up the meaning of these prepositions as we go too, right? Initially. Ad ha-nahar is as far as the river. And notice he's throwing in articles with those objects, isn't he? There wouldn't have to be an article there with a preposition, but there could be. So ad means as far as. Min haaretz, from the land. All right? So we're saying that the prepositions are three types: independent, makaf, and inseparable. And it's only a matter of spelling. Some of the prepositions stand alone as words that are written alone. You see that in those sections, those examples. Lifnei, tachat, achar, bain. Some are connected with the makaf, like we just read. And some simply attach to the beginning of the word, just like the definite article would do, or just like the conjunction would do. Yes?
If you were writing, how would you know?
You just have to know. That's why you have to know that Lifnei stands alone, And,
So
pretty soon
just
you get used to
memorize
it.
it is how you would know.
Yeah, you'd know that all is a McCafe preposition and that Beit, Lamed, and Kaf just attached to the beginning of the word. So you can see the longer they are, the more, they stand. The long ones in spelling stand alone. The medium long ones are attached by a McCafe, and the prepositions that are just one letter just attached to the word that they go with. Right? But see, that's another good thing about us learning to just recognize and not trying to write or speak, is that we just have to be able to interpret what we see rather than predict what would happen. See, and there's a huge difference in that. So bait, in, by, with, lamed, to or for, and kaf, like, as, according to. Remember we talked about all airlines, right? Those are those two McCafe prepositions. The first two, only he does them backwards here. To or toward, and upon. All right? So that's where they get the name of their airline, the Israeli airline, all airlines. All right, so how are these things going to attach? There are always kind of issues with that, right? So before most consonants, the inseparable prepositions appear with the vocal shiva. So like ba sadeh, in the field. La na'ar, for a young man. Kamelik, like a king. Before a reduced or chatef vowel, the inseparable prepositions take a corresponding short vowel of the chatef vowel. Same thing as we saw before, right? With the definite article and with the conjunction. So you get to see a pattern here, right? If you're sticking something on the front of a noun that has a chatef vowel, whatever you're sticking on the front of the noun is going to take the corresponding vowel without the chatef part, right? So if you have anashim, you're going to have ka'anashim. If you have emet, you're going to have be'emet. If you have chali, you're going to have la chali. See? Before consonants with the vocal shiva, the inseparable prepositions are spelled with a hearing. This is due to the fact that two contiguous side by side. I wonder why he didn't just say side by side instead of contiguous to begin with. Vocal shivas cannot stand at the beginning of a word. Right? So, lin v'im and live read. Okay? Again, you don't really have to worry too much about the vowel points, but you just have to realize that a beit, a lamed, and a kaf are prepositions that get stuck on the front of words, get stuck on the front of nouns, right? The noun becomes the object of the preposition. In English you have a prepositional phrase. Under the tree, or under a tree. Under is the preposition, and tree is object of the preposition.
So do you suggest we look for the root word first?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then figure out the rest?
Mm-hmm. That's why you have to know vocabulary. Now, if you look at a word with a lamed that begins with a lamed, well, it could be lave or levav, heart, right? Is that lamed part of the root? Is that lamed a preposition? Well, that's why vocabulary is so critical. If you really know your vocabulary, then that that word's going to stick right out to you. When I see lin v'im, I'm seeing navi, prophet, screaming out to me. Now, something's been added to the beginning of that word. See it? The lamed, the preposition. Something's been added to the end of that word. Masculine plural ending. See it? So you can still see the root in there, can't you? Right? I can see my 3-consonant root, navi, and I see a bunch of stuff added to it. I see barit, covenant, with the lamed added to it. Now, obviously, you're not going to, when you read your Hebrew Bible, you will not have learned all of the vocabulary for every verse that you are looking at. Virtually every verse you look at is going to have new vocabulary words, right? So you're going to be looking stuff up. And when you look it up, sometimes you might say, well, is that a vocabulary word that starts with lamed? Now, if you look it up and you don't find it in the dictionary, what are you going to do? You're going to think, oh, well, maybe that lamed is a preposition. What if I look up the vocabulary starting after the lamed? And if I look that up and find it, right, then I go, oh, well, that's obviously a lamed there, isn't it? A preposition. See, so that's how that's going to work. It's not going to be too much of a problem. And you see that preposition affixed to the very first word, Rashit, in Genesis 1. Bereshit. That ba right there is a preposition in the beginning. Right? So it's not that hard to deal with when you get used to it. All right. Now, the form of the preposition min, here's another preposition. This preposition deserves special consideration because it occurs both as a Makaf preposition and as an inseparable preposition. So, when it occurs as a Makaf preposition, it's spelled min, main, Kirik, noon, with the final noon form, right? The preposition can also be found as an inseparable preposition, just put on the front of the word. So it's just an alternate spelling. So you can have min melech with the makaf from a king, or you can have memelech, which means exactly the same thing. It's just an alternate spelling from a king. See. So again, things are going to happen when you put that name on the front of a word, right? What happens when the noon drops out is you get a dogish forte. Do you notice that in Memelech? You see that? You see the second name has a dogish forte. Why is the dogish forte there? Because the noon dropped out. The noon dropped out, and so you compensate for that by putting a dogish forte in the first consonant of the object, of the noun. You see that? Well, we know that when you're going to put a dogish forte in the first letter of a word, if the word starts with a guttural or resh, it can't take a dogish of any kind, right? So what's going to happen if the dogish can't go? Well, there's going to be compensation for that, probably in vowel changes, right? So on the top of page 53, when min is inseparably prefixed to a word beginning with the begad kafat consonant, the dogish lene of the begad kafat consonant becomes a dogish forte. That's not a big deal to us. So bayit becomes mibayit. No change in pronunciation really, but the bait is now doubled, right? Because of the dogish forte. Not simply a dogish lene, which changed the sound of the bait, but the bait is actually doubled when you put the min on there. See? But that's something you don't really need to worry about.
The sound stays hardened.
Yeah, the sound.
Forte.
Exactly. The sound stays hardened. Lene and forte always harden the sound of a begad kafat letter. And so there's really no difference in preposition. You can almost ignore that. I mean, if you're spelling and you're doing a spelling test, but remember, I'm not going to ever ask you really to spell Hebrew words. I'm not going to say right from a house. So you don't really need to worry about that, right? B, when min is inseparably prefixed to a word beginning with a guttural consonant, the guttural rejects the dogish forte of the assimilating noon, with the result that the hirik short I under the name of the preposition lengthens to its sere. So instead of me-ish, you get may-ish. But again, if you see a name at the front of a noun, you're going to think preposition min, aren't you? Right? Now later on we're going to find out that name occurs in verbs for other reasons, in the front of verbs for other reasons. But if you know your vocabulary, you're going to know if you're looking at a noun or a verb, right? Hopefully. I don't know how many nouns I parsed as verbs when I was taking Hebrew, but again, that's a reason to know your vocabulary. If you know the vocabulary, you know you're looking at a noun, you know you're looking at a verb. So if you're looking at a noun with a name on the front of it, then that's going to be a preposition. If you're looking at a verb with a name on the front of it, you're going to be thinking, maybe participle, right? Well, you can't agree with that because you don't know yet, but you will know. But for now, name on the front of a noun, min from that preposition. And C, when min is inseparably prefixed to a word beginning with chet, the dogish forte is rejected, but without compensatory lengthening, so you get mechutz. And this has happened with the other thing before. Notice how similar these patterns are, right? So, we should get used to these patterns at the vowel point. But it really doesn't make too much difference, does it? Right? As long as we know. And this is really the hard part. This is really the hard part about looking something up in your lexicon. Because you're going to always have to look up the root. If you try to look up mechutz, you're not going to find it in the dictionary. you got to look up hoots, right? So you got to know what to take off and what to leave there in order to look it up. So sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes you're looking up a couple different things before you hit on what it really is, right? But that's okay. What else we got to do?
Okay, can you go over the big men name at the end?
Top of the page?
Yeah.
Well, the God Kafat letters already have a doggish lane, right?
So you wouldn't say men big.
No. When you get a doggish forte and it doubles the letter, you don't really pronounce the doubling. Although you might pronounce it in the sense of hanging on to a little bit longer. Well, it's kind of like in English, the difference between the words grandma and grandpa. You see how much longer the M is in grandma? Because there's two of them. Grandma. Grandpa. You wouldn't say grandpa.
So you don't double it, you just sort of hold on a little.
Yeah. Or not even do that. Mibayit. You might say mibayit. I mean, it's kind of tough to, pronounce a buh any longer than buh, isn't it? But you don't pronounce it twice.
Mibayit is just mibayit.
Mibayit. Bayit becomes mibayit. Mibayit.
Mibayit.
Yeah, mibayit. Exactly. All right. So the use of the preposition min, the comparative use, and if you start with the basic meaning of from, the context is going to push you in these directions, right? So if you see a word that says, or a sentence that says, wisdom is good from gold. Well, that means wisdom is better than gold. So that's how a comparative is marked in Hebrew, right? This book is good from that book. Well, this book is better than that book. See, that's how you do a comparative in Hebrew. Same with the superlative. Clever from every living thing of the field. Well, the most clever living thing of the field, superlative, right? Positive, comparative, and superlative, you know that, right? The little poem that helps you with that. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better is best. Positive, comparative, superlative. So min can be used either as a comparative or superlative. And how do you know the difference? Context. Very good. All right. See? You ought to be able to at least get 50% on all your tests in seminary now. Because Jesus loves context. That's got to be 50% of what you need to know right there, right? That's right. All right. And then the partitive use. From a fruit or some of the fruit. From the men. Some of the men. In Greek we had a partitive genitive. And here this is a way of doing a partitive idea. In other words, the fruit is the whole at which part is taken from, right? So some of the fruit. So like if you say, he took from the fruit, what does that mean? He took some of the fruit. All right. Now, the definite direct object marker, we saw this in Genesis chapter 1 already too. Any questions before we move on to it? The definite direct object marker, saw this in Genesis 1. Et, if it has a makaf. Eight, if it does not have a makaf. What does that mean? It's not translatable. You don't translate this, but it just marks out just what it says. A definite direct object. If you can pick out the direct object in a sentence, we read, in the beginning, God created the heavens, Hashemayim, and the earth, Haaretz. And both of those had this eight or et object marker in front of them, because heavens and earth are the direct objects of the verb created. Created heaven and earth. And you can see it if you turn to your Bible.
So it's kind of nice to place on the direct object for you. Tell them the part speech.
Well, there you go. See, you can see it right there in Genesis 1:1. That's page 1 of your Bible, isn't it? Right? Bereshit, bara, Elohim, 8. There it is, the definite direct object marker. 8, Hashemayim, va-8. What do you think the va there is? And, right? We know that now, right? Va-8, haaretz. Now, actually, we've learned enough, except for the verb bara, we've learned enough to actually translate Genesis 1:1 now, haven't we? See that the bait, the very first letter of the Bible, that's a preposition, isn't it? Right? And it's there with a shiva. So Bereshit, does that look like Rosh? Now it's not the word Rosh, but it's from the word Rosh, the beginning, right? So in the beginning, bara, that's a verb, we don't know yet. He created. Elohim, we know that, that's a vocabulary word, isn't it? God, and you can see how the subject typically comes after the verb in Hebrew. See that? So it isn't He created God, and there can't be any doubt here because the objects, the direct objects, have a direct object marker, right? So nobody can make the mistake of saying somebody created God here, right? In the beginning, God created 8, Hashemayim. Ha, see the ha there, the article? Just like we'd expect it. Hey, patak, dagish in the sheen. See the dagish in the sheen? Now you know where the dagish is in the sheen. You go home and tell your family, I know where the dagish is in the sheen. Because it's part of the definite article. So 8 Hashemayim, the heavens, va-8 haaretz, and the earth. Now haaretz is changed. Eretz would be without the article, and that's one of the rare cases where the vowel pointing of the noun actually changes to a comex there, right? Instead of eretz, you get haaretz. Probably that's just for euphonics or good sound, right? All right, so that's what we're looking at here. When you see this definite direct object marker, that's just exactly what it's doing. It's the next word that comes after. It's going to be a definite direct object. Now, you can have an indefinite direct object, and you don't get to use that, right? If you said the king built the temple, then you can use it. But if you said the king built a temple without being definite, then you can't use it. Some words are definite, by the way, without the article, right? You know that. I mean, some words by their nature are definite, like proper nouns and some stuff like that. So if the word is definite by its very nature, even though it doesn't have the article, you can still use that definite direct object marker. Okay, questions? Comments, criticisms, concerns? All right. Now, what this is like going to the beach, right? And you say, I need some sunscreen. And so, you lay down on the sand and you expect somebody to put some sunscreen on your back and for them to rub it in, right? Well, what has just happened is you have said, I need some sunscreen, and I have just put the whole bottle on you. It's right there. So, it's just going to take a while to rub it in, right? And so, you're just going to have to let it soak in. If you think that just by, coming and attending and up to this point that you should have all of this stuff at your command, no, that's not reasonable, is it? And you need to know that everybody understands that's not reasonable, right? But by usage in your study and our being together, it's just going to get rubbed in more and more and more. So, right now you have sunscreen on you about that thick and you look funny to everybody. But it's going to, it's going to get rubbed in, and, what needs to soak in, hopefully will soak in, and, what's not so important will be flung onto the sand, and there'll be little globules in the sand as a result of you having taken Hebrew. But, that's the process we're in right now. So you have to be patient, because all that sunscreen is not going to be rubbed in overnight, is it? Right? So you kind of have to walk around a little bit stiff, and be careful what you wear, because you got all the sunscreen all over you, right? But it just takes time, and it takes time for it to soak in. Right? And practice and usage. So part of it is your workbook. Getting in that workbook. That workbook is, if you're every moment you're in that workbook, there are 5 hands rubbing that sunscreen in, right, all over you. And that's why it feels so good to use that workbook, by the way. So that's what you want to do. So you got to stay relaxed, Because if you tense up, you're pretty much done, right? If you look at all that and you tense up, you're not going to be able to do it. You just have to remember it's going to come. What needs to stick will stick, eventually, and because we'll see it. What we're shooting toward is really being able to work in our Bible, right, in our text, and that practice of working in our Hebrew text is really what's going to work that in. And your workbook is almost as good as working in your Hebrew text, right? Because that's a similar thing. So as we do that, things are going to start to come, and things are going to become more and more second nature to you. Right? All right, so we have more vocabulary. Let's take a look at page 57. Now, this vocabulary might be a little bit challenging at first, but these words are going to be used so much in your translation that pretty soon, they'll be second nature. Now, you don't see all of the prepositions all of the time, but you see some of the prepositions all the time, and you see all the prepositions some of the time, but you can't fool anyone. All right? So, but a lot of these you're going to see an awful lot, so they're going to become second nature to you. Okay. Let's go backwards this time, since we're doing Hebrew, and start with Jerry, and let her pronounce the first vocabulary word on the top of page 57. Oh. I thought you had a moment of revelation. What's the second letter? Okay, good. Achar. Behind or after. You could say it achare. All right, good. Next. 8. All right, or et with a makef. All right. That means with. All right, next.
So that's also et? Or did you want me to go to what is underneath that?
Well, that's also 8. Or et with the makef, and that's the definite direct object marker. So, notice that that's spelled the same as the preposition. Right? How you can tell the difference between the two? Context. Oh, they both have a 1.
Next to it. Oh, okay, yeah.
So the context is how you can tell the difference. Yeah, do the next one too. L. To, unto, toward.
Now I had a question about that.
Yeah.
Because I understood that was used like with Elohim and El Shaddai, that El was...
Okay, I was just going to ask the question. What's the difference between that and the word for God?
Yeah.
This is spelled El with a sagol, and the word for God is spelled Ale with a tsere.
Oh, so it would be
So it's El Shaddai. Elohim. Well, Elohim.
Yeah.
But that's not this word. It's Elohim is a plural form of Ale. Different word, though. But that's a great question. Those are the kind of questions that are good to come into your mind and for you to ask and wonder about. Sometimes there are connections like that, but not in this case. That's a different word. All right, next.
Deyom.
Pardon?
Deyom.
Well, close, but that sere yod is a vowel by itself. Sere yod's a vowel, right? So that's just one vowel sound in there.
Deyom.
No?
Deyom.
Yeah, there you go. Got it.
Bane.
Bane. All right? Bane, between. And it could be with a conjunction. And how do you pronounce that? Now, the conjunction here, he's telling you, appears as a shurik, which it does in some cases. So how would you pronounce that with a shurik on the front of it? You may want to help him? Uvain. Now remember, the Begad Kafat letter loses its dogish lane because it's not the first letter of the word anymore, right? So the shurik is pronounced u, and then it's all pronounced the same as it was, except the bait doesn't get a hard sound, it gets a soft sound, v. So uvain. So bane and uvain. All right. Ba is the next one. In, against, by. Tim.
Tatun.
All right, well, let's look at what letters we have. We have, what's first letter?
Bay.
Second letter?
Tet.
Tav.
Tav.
And then we have a Holam Vav, that's a vowel. And
a final noon.
No, that's a final Kaf. One of the ways to distinguish a final Kaf, which is kind of nifty, is oftentimes it has that little cheval looking thing.
The two dots beside it.
Yeah, you will not see a final noon with that cheval thing there. Kaf. Yeah, so here, now the cheval in the beginning of the word is always vocalized, so it's going to be but, then what?
Then T.
Mm-hmm.
Kook.
Now, that's not a shurik, that's a holam vav.
It takes a long O.
So that's a long O, right, that's a long O sound. Now, the shurik you saw, batok, there you go, batok. Right. So, for the final cough, look at that, look at those two dots that look like a cheval.
That's always do that way.
Well, often.
Mostly.
Yeah, you can't really guarantee that, let's put it this way, you can't guarantee necessarily that every final cough is going to have those dots, but every time those dots are there, it'll be a final cough. Yeah. And I suppose in the textbook you'll probably see it every time. All right, batok. All right, next. Very good. Say it again. All right, good. You can hit a little harder and say chokmah. And you caught the kametz ketuv, right? Because we have a kametz in a closed, unaccented syllable. So really, chokmah is really how it should be pronounced. Chokmah, right? Kametz, closed syllable. The hey and the kaf, and it's not accented, so it's pronounced not chach, but chok. Chokmah. And so, therefore, the shavah has to be unvocalized, has to be silent, because it's preceded by a short vowel. Very nice. All right? Good. Next.
So, okay, if I try the harder one?
Oh, instead of ka? Yeah, absolutely. Because that's not ka, like as, according to, and I'll do kol. Can you see kol with the holam? Kaf, holam, lamed, all, every, each, whole, and sometimes you have it spelled with a makaf, and it's still pronounced kol. Why? Kametz ketuv. It's in a closed, unaccented syllable. All right. So kol with a holam or kol with a kametz ketuv.
I have a question about that. Now, when looking at the vowel chart, it says it's a short O sound. It's a bottom.
Right. That's right. Now, if you can distinguish between, and again, we're doing, a different pronunciation. Bottom line is we're doing a seminary pronunciation of this stuff. Bottom line is we're pronouncing it like I was taught to pronounce it.
Okay.
Really. And so, but if you can tell the difference between the sound of bottle and father, then you're pretty good. Now, I had a Greek professor, was very convinced that, and there is a difference because the bottle sound that your mouth is rounded more. Ah, well, ah, and then father is more like ah. There is a slight difference, but boy, I'm just not that nuanced of a guy. I'm just a meat and potatoes guy. I don't even eat steak sauce on my steak. So I just give it a long old sound.
I want you to know I spent time at home literally going, father, father.
See, there you
I have. I've tried to speak.
That's right.
These are the terms.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, you could pronounce it all kinds of different ways. You could pronounce the comments too with basically an ah sound. You're going to confuse it with another vowel no matter how you pronounce it. I was taught to pronounce it as a long O, so that's how I do it. It's kind of like with Greek. You run into people who pronounce omicron as a long O. Instead of logos, they pronounce it logos to distinguish it from an alpha. But then it's the same as an omega. So what are you going to do? And that's where the professor is trying to distinguish the difference between the sound of an alpha and as an ah, and then omicron as an o. Like the O in bottle as opposed to the A in fire. So,
pronunciation, pole, is the same as pronunciation for pole, which is
voice. That's right, but it's spelled differently. It is spelled different. That's a good observation, actually. Yeah, well, we're not speaking it like Moses did anyway, so, as long as we can get the job done, we're good to go. You need to be able to pronounce it, so when you get together 10 years from now with some other seminary graduate and he says a Hebrew word, you're not lost. And, because that'd be embarrassing. And then, so you can memorize the vocabulary, basically, right? And it's pretty cool to be able to, at potlucks at church, if you can recite a prayer in Hebrew, that's pretty cool, too, Okay, so coal. I'll each of you. Okay, try the next one then.
Let's say it's the accent must be hard to put with name.
All right, but put the accent on the last syllable.
With name.
Exactly. Exactly. And we know that Shiva is silent because the letter that comes before it is a short vowel. The long vowels, the long changeable vowels are comet, sere, and cholam. All right? All the other ones that are by themselves are short vowels. So that's a short vowel. All right, and then you have la, lamed, to, toward, for, it's another preposition. All right, next. Back over here again. Close, but you have two A sounds. Yeah, there you go. La ma'an. And the accent's on the main, so la ma'an. For the sake of, on account of, in order that. All right, good. Min, from, and you can see it with the McCafe as well. Okay, Carl? All right, good. And the emphasis is on the main. The accent's on the main, so it's ma'al. Right? Above, often with min, so you could have mima'al, from above. See? Odd, which is a spatial preposition, well, spatial and temporal. Spatial, to, unto, as far as, or temporal, until, while. All right? All, on, upon, against. All right? And next, all with the McCafe. How would you pronounce that, Jerry?
The one right after that? The one right after Carl's? Is that what you're looking at?
No, I'm on the top of page 58,
Okay.
the second one down. The bait doesn't have a dogish in it, so it sounds like a V.
Okay,
That's right, all. All davar. Because of, on account of. Okay, Les?
That would be.
Okay, that's a hirik there, right? Hirik is an I vowel. So that would be eem. Very good, excellent. All right. Next one, Tim.
Hey?
Pretty close. Sigol is a short E. Peh.
Hey?
Peh, mouth. And next one.
Soda.
Close, but that's not a constitutive because it's not a closed syllable.
Sada.
Sadeh, right. The seen commas are a syllable, and then the dalet, segol, hey become a syllable. But that's good. All right, and finally the last one. Tachat. Yeah, emphasis on the first syllable, but yeah, tachat. Very good. Tachat. Beneath, under. All right, I'll go back and say them all, beginning with the first one, of course. Achar, behind, after. Eight, with. Eight, the definite object marker. El, to or toward. Bain, between. Ba, in, by. Batok, in the midst, middle. Chokmah, wisdom, experience, shrewdness. Ka, like as, according to. Kol, all, every. Lifnei, before, in the presence of. And that word lifnei is a derivative of the word peh, mouth, believe it or not. Right? At least I believe it is. Well, don't go to the bank on that. I could be wrong, but I think it is. Okay, lamed, la, to, toward. La ma'an, for the sake of, on account of. You can see that lamed preposition there combining with another to make that new preposition. Min, from. Ma'al, above. Mitzvah, command. Did we skip that one? We might have skipped that one. Mitzvah.
You talked about it earlier.
Yeah. All right. That's how I say that. Mitzvah. Ad. To or unto or until or while. All, upon, on, against. All devar, because of, on account of. Im, with. Peh, mouth. Sadeh, field. And tachat, beneath, under, instead of. All right. This is what I was thinking of. I was wrong about that. If you look on page 59, several high-frequency prepositions are formed from the noun paneh, not the word for mouth, but face. And lifnei is one that comes to the face, before, in the presence of. That's what I was thinking of. Mifnei, from the presence of. Milifnei, away from before. All paneh, in the face of, in the sight of, in front of, before, opposite to. The following are some common prepositions that are created by combining two different prepositions, me'al and mitachat and me. And the following prepositions are created by compounding of a noun with a preposition. All devar, we had that on account of. Batok, in the midst of. And mitok, also from the midst of. Okay, so lots of vocabulary to learn new for next time, but we have 3 weeks. Lots of stuff to review. So, curl up by the fireplace and, do some work. Well, take a nap and then do some Hebrew, and take a nap and do some more Hebrew, and have some hot chocolate, and take a nap and do some more Hebrew. So, just have fun with it. It's important to try to be having fun with it, because then you'll like it and you'll remember it better.
So we don't come back for 3 weeks?
Yep. So January 9th is the next time we meet. But let's take a look at our Bibles before we go and see if we can learn a little bit. So better change the tape then.